My name's Angelo, and welcome to We Want Picks. I'm going to break down the entire UFC Vegas 52 fight card. I'm going to give you my predictions, and I'm going to give you my DraftKings insight. We're going to talk about who's worth the money, who's not worth the money, and who you should have in your lineup. Before I jump in, go to WeWantPicks.com/DraftKings. We have a free DraftKings league. It's free to participate in. It's free to play against us and the rest of the community. So hop in there, give it a go. WeWantPicks.com/DraftKings. And we're just going to do this in fight order. As you see here, Manel Kape, that fight is dropped. Manel Kape pissed hot. His blood test came back. He had some banned substance in there. I think it's a 6-month suspension. They're still working out all the details, but that fight is canceled. So we are Dean Barry versus Mike Jackson opener. Dean Barry making his UFC debut. So no stats here. He is an Irish prospect. He actually was signed a year and a half ago, but he's finally making his way to the UFC now. He's a good striker, got a karate style, decent power in his hands, but very inexperienced. Only 4-1 in his last 5. Mike Jackson, you see he's fought in the UFC before, but 2018 was his last fight. It was a win against CM Punk, but that actually was overturned because he smoked some weed. So they overturned that win. Before that was a loss to Mickey Gall where he was submitted. Mike Jackson's a kickboxer. He's got decent kickboxing experience. He's got pretty good timing. And what's crazy about this fight is Dean Barry, betting-wise, is an insane favorite. Minus 1,400, something absurd like that. DraftKings has Dean Barry as a massive favorite as well. The problem is we've got like one fighter with 6 fights, another fighter with only 2 fights. Neither one of them are probably UFC ready. Honestly, Dean Barry, I know there's a ton of hype around this guy, and I know he's very talented, but that's why the UFC is giving him Mike Jackson, who hasn't fought since 2018, who really isn't, and not only hasn't fought in the UFC, just hasn't fought. He's not really taking his MMA career that seriously here. So anyway, Dean Barry's probably the pick, but the reality is this is striker versus striker, and Mike Jackson's a decent striker. He's not a nobody, and it's not even like, if we were talking high-level wrestler versus only a striker, I would understand that discrepancy in pricing or odds, but we're not. So I actually am not going to have Dean Barry in my lineup. He probably wins. He probably wins by stoppage, but I just think there's some other guys on here that are known entities that are worth the money. Then we've got Marcin Prachniow taking on Felipe Lins. Marcin Prachniow, he was a big-time prospect coming into the UFC. He was undefeated. Well, not undefeated, but big-time prospect. He came in here, lost. 3 first-round knockouts in a row. Then he strung together a few wins. He beat Khalil Roundtree, Ike Villanueva. He's a good guy. He's got 400 combat karate wins. Wins, not fights, wins. But we haven't seen him use that style yet in MMA, but he's a very talented guy. He's taking on Felipe Lins. Felipe Lins is a heavyweight. He's coming down to light heavyweight. He does have some power in his hands. He's also looking for his UFC debut. And if he could take that power that he had at heavyweight and bring that down to light heavyweight, he probably will have some success here against Prachniow. So I do think Prachniow is probably the more technical fighter because he has that combat karate background. He has a whole set of skills we haven't seen him use. Felipe Lins lost a decision to Andrei Arlovsky. He was stopped by Tanner Boser, but Tanner Boser's good. He's good. He's athletic. He's good. And again, this is at heavyweight. So I actually like Felipe Lins to win here. I think $7,800 if you think Felipe Lins wins. I think that's a solid price point because he is a heavyweight coming down. He does have power in his hands, and Prachniow has been knocked out in the first round, his first 3 UFC fights. Then we have last-minute replacement Evan Elder. He is making his UFC debut. He's only, 6 or 7 fights into his career, but he is making his UFC debut on very short notice, and he's taking on Preston Parsons. Preston Parsons, he's coming off this loss in his UFC debut, and that was short notice. He has a 100% finish rate. All submissions, or obviously his loss was a stoppage here, but all submissions in his wins. He's an aggressive BJJ black belt. He comes forward throwing big bombs, looks to get you to the ground and work from there. Preston Parsons is very tough, pretty good guy, and I don't want to say proven entity yet because he hasn't won in the UFC, but he does have 12 fights, right? Evan Elder, again, he's stepping up on short notice, but he was supposed to fight the first week in May. So I imagine he's in shape, he's ready to go, but he's also a lightweight. and he's coming up to welterweight here to fight Preston Parsons, get the crack at the UFC. He's got solid takedowns. He's got good hands. He's a very well-rounded guy. He started as like an 8-year-old in MMA. He's not taking a different skill set with him. This is tricky because DraftKings has basically said this is a pick'em. Preston Parsons is probably, definitely the better grappler. Evan Elder's probably the more well-rounded fighter. You got to pick a side here, but frankly, I don't think I'll have either one of these guys in my DraftKings lineup. I do think Evan Elder can squeak out a win. He's the more talented guy. He's very well-rounded. He's got a great team, but it is his UFC debut. It is short notice. He is coming up in weight, and I don't necessarily trust Preston Parsons. With that being said, history tells us if he wins by submission, so you could get solid points out of him at that $8,100. It's literally dead even as far as DraftKings is concerned. And then we have Kyori Lang taking on Cameron Elsay. Keelang Aori Keelang, and I'm sorry about the pronunciations, especially when you have to switch the front and the back. But he's a really well-rounded guy. He's got incredible pressure. He's got a solid pace. He can fight a technical fight, or he can brawl. He took down Jeff Molina, you see, 3 times here. He took down Cody Durden once, but he was also taken down 5 times in that fight. But he's a very good striker that can grapple if he needs to. He's got solid footwork and a pretty sturdy chin. And he is taking on Cameron Elsay. Cameron Elsay, he lost to Kyler Phillips in his UFC debut, but we're going on a year and a half ago at this point, and that was short notice, and he was full-on quarantined leading up to that fight. He has all stoppage wins. Every one of his wins is a stoppage, and they're mixed bag between submissions and knockouts. He's probably primarily a grappler, but he does have solid hands. He's got good footwork. And the issue is he does chase finishes, so he can give up rounds. Like he'll chase a stoppage on his feet and then get taken down, or he'll chase a stoppage on the mat and then get reversed. I do think Cameron Elsay wins this fight. I like him at $7,100 because he does have very real pressure. He is dangerous on his feet. He is dangerous on the ground. And I think this is a razor-thin fight. I think this is closer to a pick'em. So when you get to DraftKings and DraftKings says he's a sizable underdog, I think he's probably worth it, right? You can't have all favorites in your DraftKings lineup. So I think Cameron Elsay is one of those underdogs that you should probably have in there. Then we've got Tyson Pedro taking on Ike Villanueva. And you probably haven't heard Tyson's name. But he does have 6 fights in the UFC. But he hasn't fought since 2018. A 3-year layoff. 3-year layoff for Tyson Pedro. And what's crazy is, he's a giant, ridiculously huge favorite. And I get it. He's fighting Ike Villanueva, who has a tendency to get stopped. But Tyson Pedro, he hasn't fought again since 2018. And he's a grappler. He's a pretty well-rounded guy, but for the most part, he's a grappler. His takedowns are not amazing, but he has no problem charging forward and just committing to get one, especially if you overcommit to your strikes. He'll drop down, shoot a double, and work for it. Once he hits the ground, he is looking to strike more than submit, but if you scramble, he will snatch something up. He's a pretty well-rounded guy. Like I said, decent hands, decent ground, but the reality is he's mostly a grappler. And he's taking on Ike Villanueva, and this is a pretty shocking record here, right? Only 1-4 in his last 5, and the 4 losses are all stoppages. But he is a pretty sturdy guy otherwise, meaning I get it, he's getting KO'd and TKO'd, but he will stand there and he will bang with you, and he's got good hands. He's got solid boxing. He'll never just throw one punch at a time. He's getting a little older here. And the reality is, yes, he probably loses, right? He probably loses. The UFC set this up to give him, to give Tyson a solid win here. But I don't know if I can spend the kind of money DraftKings is asking me to on a guy that hasn't fought in 3 years. So Tyson Pedro probably wins. But if he's rusty on his feet and his takedowns are sloppy, Ike Villanueva's got decent takedown defense. If he's rusty on his feet and his takedowns are kind of sloppy, Ike's going to touch his face. He's going to touch his face. He's going to put it out there. He's been busy, not on the right side of it, but he has been busy for a while now. I do think, I'm not spending the $6,900. I do think Tyson Pedro wins, but again, it's just so tough to spend that kind of money in DraftKings, spend that much of your budget on a guy that hasn't fought in 3 years. But the reality is he probably wins, and when Ike Villanueva loses, it is a stoppage. So it is what it is. Then we've got Dwight Grant taking on Sergey Konzako. Dwight Grant, he's tall, he's long, he's got clean striking, he uses his range really well. He has a ton of power, solid takedown defense. His cardio could go either way. And he has 2 losses in the UFC. He lost to Daniel Rodriguez. He was knocked out pretty bad in that fight, but he was winning that fight. He almost got his own knockout. And you can see he has the knockdown here, but then he gassed, and that's why he got stopped. And his other losses to Trinaldo, he was taken out a whole bunch of times, and control time was the issue in that Trinaldo fight. And that was a split decision. Dwight Grant's a good, solid fighter. He's taken on Sergey Konzako. I'm sorry about these pronunciations, guys. He hasn't fought since 2019, and that's the story of this card. Lots of guys coming off very long layoffs. He hasn't fought since 2019, but he's very good. He's a creative striker. He's got great speed, power, solid combinations, takedown if he needs them. He can march forward, throwing bombs from his hips, or fight a technical fight. He's got pressure, pace. He doesn't get tired. He's very, very dangerous. He's a very dangerous fighter here. I think Dwight Grant wins. I do think Grant wins. $7,900. He's also not a bad underdog because he does have power. He does have, technical striking. He's a fast, solid guy that's pretty well-rounded. I think Sergey's pressure could be an issue after the first round, but I do like Dwight Grant to win, and I don't think he gets stopped if he loses. So I don't think, Sergey, again, 2-year layoff. A lot of questions there. I'm probably not spending the $8,300 on him. Then we got Marc-Andre Barreau. He's coming back after a bad knockout. He was straight up flatlined. A bad knockout against Chidi Njokuani. And look at this date, February 5th. It is only April 20th. So February to March, March to April, April to May. We're not even 3 months. We're not even 3 months into this knockout, and he was knocked out. I am not a doctor. I am not a CTE expert, but I have been around MMA for a very long time and managed a lot of fighters, some of who have taken beatings and then come back a little too soon, and sometimes you don't ever recover from that. I just think Marc-Andre needs more time off than this. He's coming in on short notice. I do not think he should be doing that. This is too fast of a turnaround. He was flatlined in that fight, and he is fighting Jordan Wright. Jordan Wright is dangerous. All stoppage wins. All stoppage wins. He is dangerous. He has power. He can stop people. He's got solid jiu-jitsu, solid kickboxing. Yes, he is coming off a knockout to Bruno Silva, but it's Bruno Silva. The guy hits like a freaking freight train. Also, Joaquin Buckley hits like a freight train. And I'm not saying Jordan Wright has an iron chin. I'm just saying Marc-Andre hasn't even recovered from his knockout. I like Jordan Wright here. He will be in my DraftKings lineup. He's creative. He's a dynamic striker. Marc-Andre doesn't necessarily have the power that some of these other guys do that beat Jordan Wright. So big fan of Jordan Wright in here. Love him at the underdog price. He will be in my DraftKings lineup. Then we got Charles Jourdain, and he's taking on Lando Venata. Charles Jourdain, really fun, come forward, creative striker that really knows how to put things together and have a good time out there. He's exciting. He's exciting. He's exciting. And I'm just going to keep saying that because he is very exciting. The problem is sometimes people confuse exciting for technical because he's not technical and he is very tough, but I have him losing this fight. Like, people love him and people disagree with this pick, but Lando Venata, he's also very fun, but he's a big guy. He was a lightweight that's now come down to featherweight. He won his featherweight debut against Mike Grundy. Okay, Mike Grundy took him down 3 times. He still won that fight, which A, shows me his cardio can keep up, and B, shows me that he's tough. He tripled Mike Grundy's strikes in that fight. He's got wild spinning attacks. He comes out fast. He is not a slow starter. His takedown defense is just okay. And this is a striker versus striker matchup, but Lando Venata can take people down, can come with that forward pressure, can come with that heat, has power in his hands, is tough. I like Lando Venata to win this fight. Another guy, $7,700. I will take him as an underdog, depending what my lineup looks like. He may be in it. Where does that leave us? Then we have Alexander Romanov, an absolute beast of a wrestler. This win, however, some people think the judges should have had it the other way. This win was not a great win. It exposed some of his skill gaps, if you will. But this Jared Vanderaa win, this is exactly what we're going to get. He's worth $9,600. He is going to take him down a bunch of times and pound the crap out of Chase Sherman. I love Chase Sherman. I'm happy for Chase Sherman that he's getting a UFC comeback. He was cut. They cut his ass. They cut him. And then he's stepping up on short notice to fight Alexander Romanov. I'm happy for him. I'm rooting for him. But he doesn't have the power in his hands to stop Alexander Romanov. He does have durability. He does have cardio. He does have very good volume with his strikes. But I don't see him stopping Romanov. And that is the only way he's going to win this fight. So do not get Chase Sherman. I think Romanov scores well over 100 points. I will spend the $9,600. Then we got Macy Barber taking on Montana De La Rosa. Macy Barber, she is a talented girl. She's got solid kickboxing, solid wrestling if she needs it, decent wrestling defense if she needs it. The problem is she can break. She broke against Roxanne Modafferi. This fight against Alexa Grasso, honestly, you could argue she won. She landed more strikes, had more takedowns, had more control time. But this Miranda Maverick fight, she lost. She lost that fight. So you could argue she should be 1-2 in her last 3 or 0-3 in her last 3, depending on how you want to break down those fights. But she is talented, and she's very well-rounded. She's fighting Montana De La Rosa. Montana De La Rosa is a grappler. She has wrestled the majority of her life. She's not an MMA grappler. She's actually a wrestler that has wrestled in high school and at different levels. And you can see that here with all of these takedowns. She puts up solid points in her wins because of the takedowns, because of the control time. This win against Lipsky, yes, she had 2 takedowns, but what was impressive is her hands looked amazing in that fight. She moved her camp to team elevation. Obviously, her hands are evolving. I think Macy Barber wins this fight, but Montana De La Rosa, every day that goes by, I'm leaning more towards her because she does have the grappling. We know that. And now she's becoming a threat on her feet. So, listen, I'm not going to have Macy Barber in my lineup, and Montana De La Rosa may be worth it because, I mean, listen, 41 points isn't a ton, but look, she lost to Viviane Araújo. She put up 41 points, and if we're talking $7,200 price tag to put up 40, 50, 60, and if she wins even more than that, she may be worth it for your lineup, especially if you think she wins, which she absolutely can win. Then we got the co-main event. We got Clay Guida taking on Claudio Puelles. Clay Guida, if I need to tell you who he is at this point, then you have not been watching MMA for very long. He's ridiculously busy. He has had 35 fights in the UFC. 35 fights in the UFC. He's fast. He's got decent hands, decent wrestling, phenomenal cardio, never stops moving. Clay Guida will grind you down. This win against Santos, he was 99% knocked out. 99% knocked out. Somehow survived, came back, and got his own win. And that just shows just how gritty and tough Clay Guida actually is. He's taking on Claudio Puelles. Claudio Puelles, it's funny because I like him to win, but he's actually my worst nightmare. Doesn't have great takedowns and relies on his jiu-jitsu way too much. But I think Claudio Puelles wins this fight, and I think it's because Clay Guida is over 40. He's definitely starting to slow down, albeit still fast. He's definitely starting to take some damage, and I think Claudio Puelles can get something done here. I think his forward pressure, his aggression, even if he doesn't get the first takedown, I think he'll get the second, and I think he'll go from there. I mean, they're not the best takedowns, but he does have takedowns, and I mentioned Clay Guida has got 35 fights in the UFC. Only 2 of them has he won when he was taken down. So in 35 fights, when he is taken down, he's only won 2 of those fights. So frankly, I think Claudio Puelles can get this done. I don't know if I like the pricing though, right? He's at $8,000. I wish he was at like $75,000. But I like Claudio Puelles to win. I don't know if he'll submit Clay Guida because let's go back very quickly. I mean, Jim Miller submitted him, but that was a few years ago. Maybe he can. I'm not sure. I do think Claudio Puelles wins that fight, though. Then we have the main event of the evening, Jessica Andrade taking on Amanda Lemos. Jessica Andrade hits like a pillow. She does not have heavy hands. She does not hit hard. I'm exaggerating with hits like a pillow, but she does not have one-punch knockout power. Amanda Lemos absolutely has one-punch knockout power. But what Jessica Andrade does have is a come-forward, bully, grind-you-out, take-you-down style. And this fight is at 115 pounds where she can absolutely be the bully. I like Jessica Andrade to win this fight. I will probably spend the $8,900 because look at the numbers she puts up. Even if she doesn't get a TKO win, which history says she usually does in these moments, 88 in a 3-round decision over Pennington. That's because she's getting takedowns. She's getting control time. She's grinding you out. Add 2 rounds to that, and I think that's what we're going to get here. Amanda Lemos has ridiculous power. She can knock you out. She can put you away. And we've seen she can win a decision. She beat Angela Hill, which I honestly think she lost that fight. She had a knockdown in the first round, almost had a stoppage there, made the wrong decision to go to the ground instead of just pounding away. But she was able to come back and get a win. But look at this, only 68 points because she didn't have any takedown, didn't have much control time. Angela Hill won that fight statistically. Had a takedown, had a reversal, had more control time, landed more strikes. Anyway, Amanda Lemos got the decision, but Amanda Lemos is stupid, dangerous. So Jessica Andrade does need to be careful. Shouldn't get hit in the face on her way in, but if she can get in, close that distance, she absolutely will grind out a win. If you like Amanda Lemos to win, then you're getting a great price and you should have in your lineup. I like Jessica Andrade to win. I think she grinds it out. I think she scores well over 100. So I will have her in my lineup at $8,900. Alexander Romanov at $9,600. I'll grab another good-sized favorite and a few of those underdogs we talked about. Let me know your picks below. WeWantPicks.com/DraftKings to join our free DraftKings League. I'll see you guys on Saturday for our pre-fight live.